Let's start off, if you could categorize your work, what would you call it and what would you consider it? Although we don't like to put it in a category, I'm sure.
Sure, yeah, I do. I hate being pegged. I would call it, it verges on abstraction, but in a lot of them, I do straightforward abstraction, but I also like to do a lot of abstract stylized pieces that refer to nature. And the majority of my work does. And that's based on my interest in a certain group of modernist abstract painters from 30s, 40s, 50s who were going into abstraction and yet still wanted to have a reference, and nature was what they referred to.
So a lot of your work would be because you live in such a beautiful place.
I would say so, definitely. One of my favorite groups of modernist abstract painters were located in New Mexico, so it would make sense that their work really influenced me and gave me the idea to take my interest in abstraction and refer it to nature and the landscape of Colorado specifically.
Okay, so specific things that you've painted in an abstract way, can you give us that?
Boy, I've done a lot of red rock forms, which probably refer to the Garden of the Gods, a lot of mountain forms, of course, big billowy white clouds, clouds of different colors, tree forms, pine trees, sometimes I put birds in there. I find Colorado landscape, especially with the mountains and things, to have a real nice geometric flair to it. So that helps to add to the abstract element of it.
When did you start being an art? What was, I guess, what's the first time you consider yourself an artist? How old were you?
Well, I started going to Bemis when I was 5, but I probably didn't think of myself as, I know in grade school I did.
Really?
Yeah.
You started that early?
And I told people that's what I was going to be, so.
Really?
Yeah, I guess I lucked out.
Well, that's early for a kid to know that you want to be an artist.
Yeah, I always liked doing it. It was.
Did you start with what? Sculpting?
I did clay at Bemis for years and years. Made little animals, hundreds of little animals at Bemis.
Do you still have any of those animals?
I have them in boxes.
Of all the animals?
A lot of them, the majority. Kept a lot of them, at least my mother did for me, and then I got them.
You look back at them and you're like...
Yeah, they make me laugh, but...
Which ones are your favorites?
Let's see, I did a little crab and I tried to make it really, really smooth. Towards my last years at Bemis, I went in one summer and I did a series of groups of animal families, and those are my favorites, because I did like a group of elephants, the mother, the father, and the babies, and goats, and dogs, and that was fun.
Do you think some kids just have the knack for art, or like an artistic ability, or do you think it's cultivated?
I think it can be both. I think for some people it seems to just be that way, that you are interested in it from the get-go. For some kids it comes a little later on, and maybe with the help of parents and schools and facilities, it comes to them too.
But it's important no matter what.
Oh yeah, I think it's incredibly important. I think it helps a kid to understand themselves, to gain self-confidence, to be able to express themselves in a different way.
And so having Bemis available to you was huge.
It was very important. I went to a small parochial school, and they did have somebody come in once a week and give an art class. But for somebody who's really, really interested in that wasn't really enough. So to be able to then go to Bemis once a week in the night or on the weekends was absolutely fabulous.
So you went once a week?
I believe so. I don't really remember. I remember towards the end, when I was like 13 or 14, I went on Saturdays, and the woman who ran it at the time, Miss Owen, didn't require me to go to a class. She allowed me just to sit in the clay studio and by myself and do whatever I wanted for like 3 or 4 hours. And then she'd fire the work for me and show me the glazes. So she let me do what I wanted by myself. She was very trusting.
And I mean, I think that a lot of people now are looking at the economy and all that.
Right.
As, you know, budget cuts in schools, and art education is getting slashed.
Yeah, it sure is. It's a pity.
I mean, clearly this is a good way to combat that.
Most definitely. And with all the studies and that people have been doing on the arts and how it impacts children and people. I think it's too important. It's something that should, along with athletics and things, it should be something that should be seriously considered for kids.
And I guess the last thing, advice for kids that want to be artists like you. You have advice? Is there advice? Is it
just keep doing what you love to do. If it makes you happy, do it.
Because you probably it hasn't been a smooth ride for you, huh?
No, it is a difficult way to make a living, and a lot of artists end up teaching, which is absolutely wonderful. I just knew that I never had the talent to teach. I knew I'd probably be a lousy teacher, and I didn't want to do that to any student. So I lucked out. It just happened to work for me that I was able to make a living. If it isn't enjoyable, if it comes to be too much of a struggle in a business, then is it really worth it? It has to be a joyous desire.
Yeah.
And if it is, boy, you can't get any better than that, to be able to do what you want and express yourself that way. It's a good thing.